and thank you very much for coming along to see me talk today. My name is Julian Venables, and I've been an astrologer for almost 25 years. And I think maybe to start this off, I've put a chart on your chair so you can look at a chart. This is actually right now. This is 4:15 in the afternoon today. If you look at the top left-hand corner here, you'll see the chart data. And this is exactly what's happening in the sky right now, with the planets placed as they are. Now, the reason I've given you this is because this is a unique moment in time. And when we were all, each of us were born, that is also a unique moment in time. And so when you record your birth time, you also have, astrologically, a chart. And so this is a representative of what your chart will look like, and this is what I'm going to be teaching you on the course. You'll be receiving this page with all the symbols on it and various other indications of how to interpret the chart. And each of the 6 weeks that we go through, I will be explaining this to you, and you will be actually doing your own interpretation as I teach you how to do it. So you'll be able to decide what you like to say about yourself to yourself as a basis of learning. So this is the chart. So there we go. I thought I'd just sort of introduce that to you. But also, let's have a think now about what this actually is. Because we have to have a starting point for astrology. And astrology really is the art of time. Because we are constantly moving through time and space. Now, whichever concept you like to take for time, it's just that we're always moving forwards through time. And so to see astrology is where astrology is the mapping of the planets, and we ourselves are actually on a planet. We are standing, technically speaking, we're on the second floor at the moment, but we're standing on the surface of a planet, and therefore we are also floating in outer space. Now we have this wonderful biosphere around us, the living sphere, if you like, and so we are intimately attached to being in life on Earth. And because Earth, the planet, is in outer space, and we are an integral part of life on Earth, then we are also in outer space. So, in a way, we are in the space that we are in. So, we are part of the process of time moving through space. Because time is either, in our modern world, it's a clock on the wall, mostly. So a lot of people just see the clock on the wall and they think of that. That's actually an abstract thing, because time actually goes back thousands of years to the Babylonians, the Mesopotamians, the Sumerians, and they would actually trying to work out what space they were in. They had to kind of create a sense of what they were in. Their consciousness, their inhabited body, the soul embodied into the physical realm. So what are we in? What's this around us? So they saw the planets moving across the night sky in a band, and they saw them tracking that year after year. They see the planets doing the same thing on an approximated band around the sky. So they started to measure that band, and finally they came up to the idea that the band was a great circle. The whole thing was a circle that went all the way around the planet. And they divided that into 360 degrees. They made the wheel. Or they also made the idea of divisions of space within time. So they would then chart these planets moving through time, and as a result of that, they'd see the sun moving across the sky as well, on the same path as the planets. So when the sun was sunset at night time, the planets would follow the same path, they would be following the same path. So they created this thing called the Great Circle. Out of the Great Circle came geometry and arithmetic and mathematics. And in fact, the word mathematic or mathematikoi is the ancient Greek for the work or the understanding or the workings of one's own mind. So it's about, kind of putting the mind into order is the actual origins of the word mathematically. Anyway, so the Great Circle is this 360-degree circle that you can see here. Now the reason, as you know, in the Northern Hemisphere, or you probably don't know, but in the Northern Hemisphere there are 88 constellations. We're inside this huge celestial sphere, this great big sky dome, if you like. And it's a kind of infinite space, Everything is measured, and measurement has meaning. And that's very important to understand with astrology, because time is measurement as well. And everything has meaning based on that. So, with the Great Circle, then we have there are 12 constellations that cross that Great Circle. And those 12 constellations are the 12 zodiac signs that we are all familiar with, that you read about, for example, in the newspaper, and they are classified so that 1 in 12 people can be easily classified into one of the 12 star signs. And that's the origin of sort of like horoscopes, if you like. But also the fact that the Great Circle is, in fact, the 12 constellations are on that circle. So that's why we have 12 planets. So I'll leave it like that for now, because you see I'll be teaching you all this. But that just gives you an explanation. The planets then are going around and around. They follow the same orbit. This Great Circle is called the ecliptic. But I'm not going to go into that because I'll have handouts for you to give. I'll be giving you a full student's book on this, that I've created. So you'll be learning everything you need to know in order to understand your own chart. Now, to take this one step further, of course, people say, well, what is astrology? Well, astro is the stars, astro, and then logos, or the origin of the logos, is the language or the star, the words of stars. So, why does astrology work like it does? Because here's this complicated mathematical diagram, and yet when I talk about it to people, or you study it yourself, you start to say, well, why does that word, when I say that word, why does it mean that planet, that symbol? Why do these have words that resonate with the soul? Why does it have a deeper meaning? And it's this is getting very philosophical, but it is the idea of participation with meaning. So we have to participation is interacting with everything in our lives. We have to give things meaning again. So that's how the human experience is. We talk to each other. So we have these methods of communication. Over thousands and thousands of years, these symbols represent a planet, and then as the planet moves, so the thousands of years ago, they would say it was shepherds sitting on a hillside somewhere in the Middle East, and they'd be seeing the planets crossing over in front of the stars. As the planets move through, they'd be going, interacting with various stars that appear to be going in front of them, which is the planets going in front of the constellations. And then they'd be making up stories, So they'd be like, the princess was looking for her perfect husband, watching Venus or the moon. Princess looking for a perfect husband, and she got the sea monster came along and went, right, and so in this way fairy tales were born, mythology, yeah? Because they would watch these planets and they'd make up stories to remember them. But also they would make up metaphor. The metaphor meaning that to bring something from one place to another, to bring something to meaning, to bring something to creation. So metaphorically speaking, people would talk about the movement of the planets. Oh, the great army raged across the plain and they got stuck at the river and something happened, there was a flood, and then the other army came, or the king and the queen and the bird and the councillors and the priests, and they all did these different things. And that's legends, mysteries, fairy tales. Everything is originated with the passage of the stars over the sky. So everything boils down actually to the original art of astrology. It's also the divine science, because it's a form of science, because it works on repeated experiments with oneself, essentially, because you do your own chart, you start to get to knowledge of yourself, and then you start to see patterns evolving. And what you've got here is a circle. This is a circle of the year. So you get patterns evolving again and again and again, and every year you get to a certain few days or a couple of weeks where you think, oh God, you know, same sort of things happening. But you've got to understand that these are different time codes. If astrophysicists really embrace these again, the world, we'd be interdimensionally travelling within a few years. But they're still not. They still pretend that astrology doesn't exist. I think they're coming back to it though. But these are time codes, right? Each of these is like a formula. This is like saying E equals mc squared, right? Saturn, right? This is the symbol for Saturn. But it's like going, well, this is E equals mc squared. This is a formula, but this is actually what it is a 28-year time code that represents a certain dynamic in our space. So, the sun is a 1-year time code, and the sun goes around the great circle, around this circle once a year. It moves approximately 1 degree a day. So we have 365 days in a year, 360 degrees of the circle, and that's why we have leap years, so just to make up for the difference. And as the sun moves, so the dynamics change. Sun is the light. Sun is the light. There's so much more to tell you about this, of course, but we'll be going into it in greater detail when you sign up for the course. I'm going to introduce you to some of the planets in a minute, but does anybody have any questions on what I've said so far? Is that okay?
Fascinating.
Oh, good, right, thank you. So,
carry on.
Right, actually good. So we'll go back to the chart in a minute, right? So let me introduce you to some of the symbols very quickly. Here we have the symbol for the sun. The symbol for the sun is a circle with a dot in the centre. Now, this is actually the idea, again, if you think about mathematics, and I'm just going to do this very quickly, and I don't want to get you confused, because mathematicians and physicists and chemists and biologists, and they all like astrology. But what they always forget is astrology birthed them. It gave birth to them, right? And that's the really important thing, is that it's actually the origins of everything that they do now has its origins with the studying of the stars. So this is just looking at the symbol for the sun alone. You've got the circle, which is the circumference, right? And I said I'm not doing maths because what I'm just showing you is an artistic symbol actually. But the circumference is all the way around, and the dot is the centre of self. Is the self. It's like here I am. I just got born. Here's my, somewhere right now, someone's just gotten born, and that's their chart, right? So as they grow up, that's their centre of self, if you like. That's their centre of being in that moment in time. Because we join a time wave. When we're born, we take our first breath. We take in the prana, the conscious life force. Now, a lot of people are, in a lot of spiritual development now is about, well, where is consciousness? Where actually is it? Because when we do mindfulness and things like this, we find our centre of self, our moment of oneness, of paying attention to the very present moment. And yet, is that consciousness actually, are we picking it up? Are we transmitting it? Is it, what is we, where is it, or is it just all at one anyway? So this kind of symbol shows this sort of all at oneness. If you were stood in the centre of a circle, of your own circle of consciousness, your five senses, your sensory phenomena, will be picking up everything that you can see, and it makes a kind of sphere around yourself, right? Because you're sort of seeing that way, and then that way. You're seeing around everything in your world. You're picking up a certain set of reality parameters, and the sun is that symbol that represents that. So the sun in astrology represents the core sense of self, the core sense of ego or identity. So it's self, ego, and identity. Now, I'm writing these down because these are the dynamics. Each of these is a dynamic that makes up personality. So it's kind of like a construct of how we are. And astrology will take you one step further. It will bring in the joy of wisdom, the really understanding yourself at a very, very deep level. Because when you start to understand astrology, you start to see yourself in a new form of understanding the world that has been largely forgotten about, and then it was sort of forgotten that it was forgotten about. And now it's coming back because, well, astrology, it has waves, the Renaissance, for example, 15th, 17th century, started in Florence in Italy with the Medicis. A priest turned up from the Balkans, apparently, from the area that is now Macedonia in northern Greece. He turned up at the Medici court in Florence with this ancient text, which is called the Hermeticum, and that set the Renaissance going, which was the sort of the blossoming of the divine science. It changed art, it changed literature, it changed everything. And that was the 7 Hermetic understandings or arts. That was anyway, so that was one of the largest blossomings of astrology was in the 15th to 17th century. And then science came along, but science came along naturally out of the Renaissance. You see, science had to happen in order for us to be where we are now. And so we are evolving all the time. It's not like we've de-evolved, we are evolving all the time. But we're getting to the point where we're going to have this new super consciousness. And we can feel it all now anyway, everyone's getting ready for it. There's a big lift of consciousness going on at the moment. So the sun represents this. And then let's look at the moon. Now the moon is actually a satellite of Earth. And so here we are on Earth. Now, before Copernicus discovered that we were going around the sun, the way that everybody thought was that the Earth was at the centre. The Earth was at the centre. It was geocentric. So geocentrism is like taking the point where one is at, and then everything goes out from that point, right? So the self, or the centre of self, everything comes out from the centre of self, going out like this. When Copernicus came along and said, well, actually the sun is at the centre, and Earth is going around the sun, well, that was part of what became the scientific revolution. But the Renaissance was still Earth at the centre. Now, each of the planets, and this is, again, I'll tell you this in one of the first lessons, but I'm not going to possibly go into it today, time-wise, we'll see how it goes. But the moon is a satellite of Earth, okay? So the moon takes 28 days to do its full cycle around the Great Circle. The sun takes 1 year, right? So you have a birthday once a year. It means the sun returns back to the point where it was when you were born. And that's that symbol on your chart there. And then you have many happy returns, which is, of course, is the birthday. Yes, absolutely. Astrology is hidden everywhere. Astrology is hidden everywhere. And once you start to get it, you get it, and that's the amazing thing about it. When you start to have eyes and ears for it, you see it in all things, yeah? So it's quite a special sort of understanding of the world, And so the birthday is here, and we call that in astrology the solar return, and of course that the solar plexus is here as well, which is the centre point, of the whole body. So anyway, there's more about that another time. But I'll explain it all. So the moon, where the sun takes 1 degree a day to go around, the moon does the same circle in 28 days And it moves a lot faster in order to do that. The moon moves 12 to 14 degrees a day, depending on the current speed it's at, type of thing. So sometimes it's a bit faster, sometimes a bit closer to Earth. Like the full moon we've just had last night, the moon was closer to Earth, and it did look, actually, it does look quite larger in the sky when it's closer. So, so the moon moves very fast. And when we're born, the moon is the first thing that we encounter because it's feelings and emotions. Now, I've got this, I'm going to be telling you all about it, of course, as I teach you, but the moon is like the medium or the container that we are in. You know, it's about feelings and emotions, and I think the moon is incredibly linked to mindfulness and also to Buddhism. I just might mention this, that the Buddha had all of his greatest moments in his lifetime were on a full moon. So he was born on a full moon, he took renunciation on a full moon, he became enlightened on a full moon, he gave his first teachings on a full moon, and he passed on to nirvana on a full moon. So in a way, the Buddhists are kind of saying the moon's really involved with meditation. There's a clue, because you see, mindfulness being the more of an objective art of what taking mindfulness is now this art of meditation. But if we bring the moon into it, we start to have a whole new scope for time and various things like that. But I'm sort of working on I've got a very interesting theory I'm developing with that. But so the moon is emotions and feelings, reactions and responses. And as the moon goes through phases in the year, so in the month, so we get noticeable emotional developments in our own lives. So new moon, first quarter, full moon, last quarter, back to the new moon. So every once a week, because it's 28 days, we get an emotional connection where we move forwards a bit more. So we go new moon, first quarter, full moon. So something that starts at the new moon becomes to light, is brought to light at the full moon. So the moon opposed the sun last night. So as the moon rose above the English Channel, we all saw it. You know, I was looking at it from Worthing where I live, but the moon rose up in the thing, and as the glow of the sun was setting in the west, the sky was all glowing orange and red. And then the moon popped up over the channel, and it was just like that, because the full moon, sun is opposite the moon, and something comes to light. So in our own lives, because the art of astrology is the art of bringing the heavens to earth, we interact, we become personalised with what's going on in the sky. So your understanding of time and the process of life and everything changes when you take on the planets. You know, you bring them to life. So with that in mind, of course, then we're looking at Julian, or Carl Jung, of course, was an astrologer who then created psychology, or modern psychology, because he got it from Freud. But it was basically, Jung was an astrologer, and Jung said, well, these are the stories in the sky, the archetypes. These are things we all relate to. So these are archetypes as well, these symbols. So the sun is the father, or someone who is in the spotlight. Yeah? So when you read the news every day, if the sun's making an aspect to something, like Sun-Saturn aspects, well, it's going to be the government. You know, Sun-Jupiter is going to be someone big in, say, faith or belief. Sun-Venus is often like an important female politician. Sun-Uranus will be an inventor. Sun-Neptune will be an artist. Sun-Pluto will be a despot. And you get the idea, you know, like we look into archetypes all the time. And they're in the news all the time. So that's why you have a newspaper called The Sun, but we won't talk about that. And that's why I also have a newspaper called The Times. And the Daily Mirror, because you see the mirror of the heavens is mirrored onto Earth. Right. And so the archetype of the moon is the mother, the mother and the child. And then we go to Mercury. Now, Mercury is a very quick moving planet, going between Earth and the Sun. So as it whizzes around the Sun, it goes 3 times around the Sun in a year. And Mercury is, if you take the archetypal values of Mercury, Mercury is, well, the ancients, the Greek philosophers used to see Mercury as one part of the mind, and they saw the moon as the other part of the mind. So they said we had 2 parts of mind. We would have the moon, which is the irrational part of mind. So when the moon is doing strong phases, first quarter, full moon, etc., we would have what they used to call in medieval times the loons, which of course is where you get all these different words in modern day things of people who act irrationally. And also, you know, that is the way that the moon works. Mercury, however, is the rational part of the mind. So if the moon was acting irrationally, Mercury tries to reason it out. And we've all got a moon and we've all got a Mercury. But it depends what, of course, what we call in astrology, the condition of the planet in your chart. And all this will be explained as I teach you, because there's a whole set of things called dignities, which we'll be talking about in more detail. So Mercury is to do with the mind, communications and talking. Mercury in astrology rules the hands and the fingers, so it holds a pen, it reads a book, it talks with its hands, you know, and it's very mercurial. So it's mind, language, communications. So the dynamic of Mercury, the archetypal dynamic is mobile phones in the modern age. Mobile phones, it's emails, it's texts, it's things like Wi-Fi, but it also used to be postal service, post offices, postman, letters, writing a letter and sending it in the post. It's education, so it's learning because it's talking to people, communicating, so as a dynamic. It's trains, planes, and automobiles, because you go from one train, you travel a distance. It's like travelling a distance, like my voice travelling across the room. Mercury takes the messages from A to B, so it's transport. So it's the ticket inspector, it's the train driver, it's all these type of archetypes. This is what Mercury is. And then we get to Venus, and Venus is also between Earth and the Sun. So Venus is the planet of relating and relationships. It's the planet of what we attract in our lives and what we like. So Venus is a bit like a social magnet. It pulls things to us, because it's like, well, I really like that kind of music. So you go out and buy the CD, you download all those tunes. I really like that kind of style of clothing, so I'll get all those clothes. I really like that food, so I'll make sure that I buy the food or go out to the restaurants that has that food. I really like that type of art, so I'll make sure I get those pictures of that type of artist. I really like that colour. I really like that person. So, it's about moving around and relating to the world around you. Venus is what you like and what you love. And therefore, it's values, money, it's also self-worth. As in, if you've got a very good Venus, then you value yourself, But, and this is the sort of things you're going to discover about the strength of different planets in your chart. So it gives you more insights into why things have happened the way they have in your life and so on and so forth. Values, money, self-worth, attraction. And so it's also things like relationships and marriage. Now the archetype of Venus is the young woman, is the idea of connecting people together, so it's like a counsellor. But it's also things like an artist and a musician. A lot of musicians are Librans, and Venus rules Libra. So it's the creativity that creates and brings things to you as well. Then we get to Mars, and Mars is the planet of action, drive, and competition. So with this, you get Mars is the sportsman, right, or the soldier, because it's like Venus and Mars are like they're like the anima and the animus in psychology. But so are the Sun and the Moon. This is animus and this is anima. So these are the feminine planets, Moon and Venus. The Sun and Mars are the masculine planets. Mercury is neutral, right? Mercury is the right word, androgynous, I think. Yes, Mercury is the androgynous planet, because Mercury connects to whatever it's with in the chart. So this is the planet that sort of moves all over the place. It doesn't really matter how it connects or what it identifies with. Whereas that is this and this are very strong, sort of a masculine energy. Moon and Venus are very feminine. Yeah, but that quite basically explains those first 5 planets, which are the relationship planets. So there's you can kind of draw a line here, because these first 5, the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars explain everything about relationships, and that's the whole thing right there. There's actually in astronomy as well. There's a huge gap in space between Mars and Jupiter. Yeah, Mars takes 18 months to orbit around the Sun. Jupiter takes 12 years. So there's a massive gap in space here. So everything in terms of human relationships is found with these 5 planets. So if you really want to know yourself and your relationships and the dynamics behind relationships, you look at the placement of Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. So, Mars, sports, conquering, driving. Mars rules cars, because it's got a combustion engine. Mars is a fire element planet, so the engine, and Mars rules the metal iron. So a car has an iron engine with combustion inside it, so that's Mars. And when you push the pedal, you go in a direction forwards. You know, Mars goes like that. Nothing stops Mars. Once it's got something in its head, it goes forward. Whereas Venus goes, once Venus has got something in its head, it's like, bring it in, right? Bring it, generate, Mercury, once it gets something in its head, it's like, well, I'm going to take it from here to over here, And the Moon and the Sun are very centralised, within the self. So Mars is this energetic, it's a projectile. So Mars is a bowler in cricket. It's a pitcher in baseball. It holds a weapon, or it holds a snooker cue, or it's about the movement and energy transference. It's a transferring of energy, like a kinetic, like that. And that's Mars. So, with Mars, you get competition. It's a football team, but it's also tennis, or boxing, or cricket, or football, rugby, whatever. It's sports, competition, sporting, it's goal seeking, goal seeking. And therefore it's related to things like competition, sporting, conquest, to a certain extent. And the archetype of Mars is a sportsman, sportswoman, sportsman. Is a soldier. But it's also someone, say, who could be, example, another Mars thing would be, say, a tree surgeon who handles a chainsaw all day long. You know, that's his job. He's using a Mars type of energetic machine, doing things. You know, but what I'm trying to say is the dynamics. Mars, you know, there's Mars things everywhere. It's a car driver. You know, so I'll put car driver. And then we get to this huge gap in space. How are we all doing? Are you enjoying this?
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, good, excellent. Right. And can you see how you might find this very interesting in placing it on your own charts? Yeah, good. Right. So we get to Jupiter. Now, Jupiter. So all these planets so far describe very much about the self within a certain area or space, within a space and time. So the Moon is going around the Earth. The Mercury and Venus are going around the Sun. And Mars is going one step out from Earth. So if you think of that astronomical diagram, you've got Sun at the centre, glowing in the light. You've got then Mercury whizzing around it, Venus whizzing around it. Then you've got Earth, with Moon going around Earth, and then you've got Mars going around the outer edge. So, and all that's the kind of that 18 months to 28 days of time, yeah? And so it's kind of like a constantly moving thing. And then there's this huge gap in space, and we get to Jupiter and Saturn. Now these are a pair. This is like chalk and cheese because they're completely different. It's a bit like Venus and Mars. Jupiter and Saturn are career-based planets. Just a quick glass of water. Jupiter and Saturn are like because Jupiter takes 12 years and Saturn takes 28 years, then you work a long time at developing these, and so they're like career-based kind of things. Jupiter is how you travel, how you expand into life, how you learn about things. It's the philosophy, it's higher learning, it's everything past secondary education. Actually, it is secondary education. Mercury is primary education, Jupiter's secondary education, and beyond. So it's universities and colleges and higher learning, higher education. But it's also faith, belief. It's the pilgrims and the seekers in life. In the ancient days, the pilgrims, you know, Canterbury Tales or doing a pilgrimage, they go from one place to another. You know, people will go from Canterbury to Santiago de Compostela in northwestern Spain. You know, that very famous cathedral that's very famous for pilgrimages. And it would be that people would travel because they had to go to the great horizon to see something. They had to keep on moving in order to understand where they were going in space, you know, in their own time. And it adds to the greater learning or the greater understanding of self as to travel. For example, moving from one place to another is very important. It's a very Jupiterian thing to do. So, you know, it's kind of like of that nature. So, the Jupiter is about learning and seeking and faith and belief. So it's everything from the travel agent to the pilgrim to the priest, okay, or the monk or the nun, you know. And it's about learning. Excuse my writing. It's also publishers and broadcasters, because it's about getting the message out there in a bigger, more expansive way. Its meaning is basically faith, belief and learning, and philosophy. So when you go to universities and you see professors, they're all Jupiter types, yeah? When you see someone who's very attached to their religion, they're a Jupiter type. When you see someone who has a strong faith or belief in something, it's a Jupiter type. And that probably is or a traveller, someone who's always got their backpack on, always onward going, you know, something over the next horizon. Got to go and see this, got to go and see that, got to learn about this. They're Jupiter types. And then we get to Saturn, and Saturn takes 28 years. And Saturn is the farthest boundary. Before telescopes were invented, the ancients used to be able to see all the planets without a telescope. So you can see Saturn, you can see all the planets. Saturn was the coldest, dimmest light. They can still see it. So Saturn was the boundary marker. It was at the edge of the known world. So it was and it ruled what they call the seventh heaven. Okay, because all these is a heaven. Each of these is heaven. Well, each in turn. And Saturn was the seventh heaven before you went to the Empyrean, before you went to the starry realms or into where God lived. God lived beyond the celestial sphere, into the realm of the primum mobile, which was the unmoved mover of the heavens, which was love. So God moved the heavens with his love, with her love, goddess, God, goddess. You know, I'm talking about ancient things, but bringing it forward to the 21st century. So it would be the love of the world and the love of all creation would move the heavens. So all these are the seven heavens, and Saturn was the seventh heaven. So Saturn's the boundary keeper and the gatekeeper. So it's law and order, it's discipline, it's rules, and it's the oldest people, it's the structure, it's the hierarchy, it's the traditions. And it's, so Saturn rules old things and things that don't seem to change, and rules all things like law and order. So it's the laws of life, it's reality. Saturn is very grounded, very real. It's the gravitas, it's the weight on one's shoulders, because it's also responsibility. So when you do Saturnian things, it's like becoming a parent, for example, is a very Saturnian thing to do. Saturn transits often bring that, you know, in life. So it's like, oh my God, you know, I wasn't expecting that. And then you're into a Saturn phase, because then you have to become responsible, you see. But it's also like a career journey. You know, I'm working my way up the career ladder. I want to get to the top of that. To get that, you know, that job, I'll have to work at that job for 28 years to get there. Saturn works in sevens as well, so it's 7, 14, 21, 28. Authority, career. Archetypes of Saturn. You'll see them as old people because they're traditional. They've held on to things. They're structured. They've slowed down. Saturn's that cold, dim light. It's when you get to a certain point in life, you've experienced so much, and you start to slow down a bit. You know, Saturn. It's everything from things like magistrates, but it's also, you know, it's also CEOs, right, or the boardroom. It's you know, it's just things like that. You know, it's about the structures in life. All this will be explained. You know, I'll be taking all these planets into much greater detail with you, and of course looking at your own charts. But I'll be giving you the words to then create your own. You will be the creative one, creating. I'll present you with the keywords and more explanation, and then you yourselves will be looking further into that. Now, how am I doing for time, by the way, please?
Dead on 5.
Is it really? Oh, well, there we go. How about that? Now, I will tell you also about the planets with telescopes. Once the telescope was discovered, a whole new realm quickly opened up, which was Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Chiron. That's all for next time. These are the agents of chaos. But they have also the agents of evolution. I think they're pretty crazy planets, really. I really like Saturn. I think Saturn makes things very real, thank you very much. And I like my border duo there. But these, you can't avoid them. They're a whole bunch of fun. It's like opening Pandora's box when you get to Uranus, Neptune and Pluto, because you see what you'll find is, you know, you get these outer planets which have moved us forwards massively in our evolution and progress us forwards all the time. We had to find them with a telescope. We didn't know they were there before. And once the telescopes were invented, we discovered them. And then, of course, they come into our consciousness, so we start to see them interacting in the world. But, you know, Uranus, well, that looks a bit like the Starship Enterprise. I'll leave it at that. Neptune is the god of the sea, the oceans, transcendence. Pluto is nuclear power. Chiron is the healer. So we'll look at all these as part of your course. Now, I hope you enjoyed that, everybody. Did you enjoy that? I see a few smiles and maybe a bit of wow, and I'm not sure really. So thank you.
There's a lot to it, isn't there?
Is that